I'm Ben,
And I'm Ernie.
and this is Budget Nerds.
You are not alone.
And we are not alone today because we have Nick True, everybody. Hey, welcome,
Hey.
Nick.
Welcome,
What's
Nick.
up, y'all?
So I bet pretty much anybody watching Budget Nerds, these are the true nerds of YNAB. They probably know exactly who you are, Nick. But just to give an intro for anybody who doesn't know, Nick is the creator of Mapped Out Money and a big friend of YNAB. He has created tons of fantastic getting started videos that have helped a lot of people get started. He's a big part of the community. So we thought we'd have the biggest budget nerd on to talk about just our experience with YNAB. So anything else you want to say, Nick, about where to find you?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. My wife and I, we run a website called Mapped Out Money, and we have a podcast and a YouTube channel under that name. And like you said, Ben, I randomly did a YNAB video like 3 years ago, and people liked it. And so I just kept doing a few more. And it's been a lot of fun chatting YNAB.
Well, yeah, I would say that people love your YNAB videos. I mean,
yes.
Love them and often request them.
Yes. Yeah, you're good at it, Nick, and we appreciate you because you helped a lot of people. So it's pretty great. So we thought we'd just kind of talk about kind of our history with YNAB. I think this would be kind of a cool behind the scenes. A lot of people, I'm sure, are curious about how you started using YNAB, Nick, and I think me and Ernie will talk about how we started. So why don't we start with that? Like, what was your moment for when you started using YNAB? Why don't you go ahead, Nick, and maybe
sure.
Me and Ernie can go next.
So I've been kind of a budget nerd, a finance nerd my whole life. I mean, really, my parents put me in like a Crown financial class when I was in middle school that kind of like got my gears going about like, oh, money, that's kind of interesting. I can buy stuff. At the time, it was like, candy and whatever else a little kid would want. But that got my wheels turning. So anyways, long story short, when I moved out of the house when I was 18, I asked my dad, hey, I think I need to like get something to manage my money. And he set me up with Quicken because that was what he used. Right. And so I got on Quicken as like an 18-year-old going off to college, doing my thing. And I used Quicken basically until I got married. And Quicken worked fine.
Quicken's not for 18-year-olds. It's like
it was not for 18-year-olds.
That's like the old guy software, right?
Well, again, that's because my dad was like, "Well, this is what you use,"
Right.
He used QuickBooks for his business and Quicken for his personal, so it was like, "This is what you use,"
Right.
And I was like, "Okay, whatever." And so that's what I did. Well, I got married, and I'm a numbers guy. I'm super into numbers. I like Excel spreadsheets. So like the design of Quicken and all that stuff, I'm not going to disparage Quicken, but it didn't bother me. However, my wife was not a fan of the Quicken. And so when we got married, the big impetus for us was she was in grad school and she got sent off to Ohio for 10 weeks for an assistantship. She was working at Ohio State. I was still in Chattanooga, Tennessee, working there. And every couple days or so, and again, we're newly married. We're still trying to figure out how to do money together. So she would be away, I'd be here. And every couple days I would call her, notice some charge and say, hey, what are you doing? We don't have any money in the groceries. Like, you got to wait till we get paid next week or what do what's going on? And this led to some real friction during that time. And she ultimately just called me out and said, listen, Quicken is only on your computer. How in the world can you expect me to budget?
That's true.
And stick to this thing. So back in 2015, I did a bunch of searching, and YNAB had just released or had just been online not long. And that was the real selling point for me was my wife was in another location, and I needed us both to have access to everything all the time. And so I researched like 8 or 9 different budgeting tools, landed on YNAB, and we've been using it ever since.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. So it was really budgeting with a partner and being able to collaborate. That's what it was.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. me and Ernie have talked about it a little bit. I bet we can quickly talk about.
I'm curious to know what you guys did though. Yeah, how did you find it?
Why don't you go, Ernie?
Well, I'm kind of similar to you, Nick, where I like budgeting, but I didn't start doing it until after I graduated college and got married, because I thought, oh, I'm married, we have to figure out this finance thing, right? So let's start a budget. So I opened up, I think Google Sheets or something like that, and just started tracking everything there. And I liked it, but it wasn't working. Like, I was just talking about this with Christy, my wife, last night. Like, at the end of every month, we spent more than what we earned. Like, how are we doing that? I'm tracking everything. Why isn't this working? And then I have a friend, Adam, who loves YNAB, just absolutely loves it. And he was telling this group of guys, like, you got to try YNAB. You got to try YNAB. Like, it'll change your life. And finally, I'm like, okay, fine, Adam, I'll try YNAB. And this was back in the YNAB 4 days, right at the tail end before they went web-based. And so downloaded the software onto my computer, tried it. I don't know what didn't click, but I just didn't get it. And I quit. I'm like, nah, I'm going to go back to spreadsheet. And then I decided to try it again because Adam was like, stick with it. No, seriously, just try it again. It'll click and you'll love it. And he was absolutely right. Downloaded it again. And I'm not sure what clicked that second time, but it did. And I'm like, this is absolutely amazing. And so then it was shortly after that, the web-based, I jumped right on board with that and have been in love ever since.
When did you start working? Because Ernie, a lot of people don't know this. Ernie was the support rep with YNAB doing DI stuff. When did you start doing that, Ernie?
I started as a seasonal rep at the end of 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
all right.
Yeah. And then became permanent in February of 2017.
Yeah. So you're right about the same time I started too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Now I came over to the marketing team over here to making videos and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
I've got to think that there's a pretty high percentage of people that work at YNAB that used YNAB first and then like wanted to work there, like you, Ernie. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a very high percentage, right, Ben?
Yeah, for sure.
There are some that didn't use it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on like the type. Like for like a lot of like the support team and marketing folks, like pretty much all of us, like, yeah, we were customers first, but then you have to get to more like niche stuff like developers and like designers. It's a little harder to find some of those folks. Sometimes they won't have, but 100% of them get on board right away and are real excited about it. So
that's cool.
Yeah, kind of depends. But yeah, I would say, in fact, for, all our teacher positions, we pretty much make it a requirement. You already got to love YNAB. So that's how we do it. As for me, 2013, I started using YNAB. I had been using Mint before that, and I'm kind of like you guys. I was always kind of a personal finance junkie a little bit, and I was using Mint before, and it didn't really work because I wanted to do zero-based budgeting, and it's just not really set up for that. And I think I was kind of breaking the software a little bit, trying to get it to work pretty much how YNAB works. Like it started bugging out on me, guys. Like it started sending like massive calculation errors, like $10,000 like more than it was crazy. And I was getting frustrated with it. I think it's probably my fault, honestly. I'm sure the software's fine. I think it's my fault because I think I broke it a little bit trying to get it to do what I wanted to do. And I was also I had just having trouble with like reaching goals because of true expenses. I wasn't really saving for non-monthly expenses a lot. And so I was having a baby. Well, my wife was having a baby. We were expecting, and we needed to save a lot of money for like her maternity leave and medical expenses and stuff. And so that was kind of the impetus for like, okay, let's see if we can find something a little beefier, a little, something that isn't throwing me these massive calculation errors. And that's when I found YNAB. Actually, I found it on Steam because I don't know if y'all know this, but YNAB 4, which is, the previous version, was on Steam, which was kind of funny because it's not a video game. But I found it there, and I thought that was pretty weird and kind of cool, and bought it and loved it ever since. So that's my story.
And then how far into your YNAB experience as it from the user experience did you get hired?
I started just like you at the end of 2016. So about 3 years in,
Okay.
is when I jumped aboard. And it's so funny because I was like kind of in a career crisis before that. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do or my next step was, and I remember my wife asked me in January 2016, she asked me, Ben, if there's anything you could do, what would it be? Like if you do anything. And I said, well, what I really love to do is teach for YNAB. And
what an oddly specific thing to say.
I was very specific because at the time I've been all over the shout out to the YNAB subreddit. If you want to go, I've been all over the subreddit and helping people. And I just like really loved that. I was spending way too much time there. And I knew YNAB had teachers. So I was like, I want to do that. But I was like, that's never going to happen. Like, that's not a thing. But yeah, about 10 months later, I got a job here. So I was very blessed and very, very encouraged. I started as a teacher, part-time teacher, teaching workshops, and then became full-time about a year later. So yeah, so that's our stories. The other thing I wanted to talk about was like kind of a budget. What's your budget routine look like?
Yeah.
Why don't we start with Ernie this time? Maybe we can end with you, Nick.
Oh, changing up.
Yeah,
my budget routine. So I'm in my budget every single day, probably multiple times. But where I'm actually doing stuff every morning, just open the mobile app, import new transactions if I missed any, match the ones that I entered myself, and look for overspending. It's super simple. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So probably 1 or 2 minutes a day.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get it down to a science after a little while, and that's pretty good. Yeah, for me, yeah, I'm the same way. Every weekday, I reconcile my accounts, and I only have. Me and Ernie have talked about this. I only have one account that I spend money from, so it's super easy for me. And I think I need to like realize this when I tell people, "Oh yeah, you should reconcile every day." Like it's quick for me because I'm only reconciling one account, and then occasionally I'll reconcile some other accounts.
Yeah, because I have 8 accounts, and I'm just doing it every Friday. I can't reconcile every day.
Yeah, that's a little much if you have a lot to handle, but yeah, so that's my routine. I do that, and I try to enter transactions as I go. I remember back in the YNAB 4 days before we had import and all the fancy stuff, I really struggled with reconciling. Like I would only do it once every 2 or 3 weeks, and it was like such a chore. Like I've talked about this before, so I won't go too long. But I remember I would actually download a file from my bank, but I wouldn't import it into YNAB, even though YNAB 4 could do that. I don't know why. I think I was worried about duplicates. I didn't realize that it would match up. Yeah, and I would go through.
That's awesome.
And I mean, like that's a good way to handle it if you have a problem when you're reconciling. That's what you do. But when you have like 3 or 4 weeks of data, it gets to be like a lot of work, right? So, and I mean, in fact, that's what you recommend, Nick, when you're talking about, when you're reconciling and you're missing a transaction. It's just to like go through.
Totally. Yeah.
But if you do that every day, it's a heck of a lot easier than if you do that every 4 weeks, right? So I struggle with it, but eventually I was like, if I could just do this every day, it'd be so easy. And I set an alarm on my phone and just said YNAB at like 7 p.m. every night. And I just started hopping in and doing it then. It took me like 2 or 3 minutes and never looked back. I absolutely love that. So, and then as far as like, whenever I'm paid, I budget money using my template, using all the goals and everything. And then once a month, my wife and I have a budget meeting and talk about what we want to do with any extra money or what we need to change up for the month. And that's kind of how we handle things. So,
nice.
I love it.
Yeah.
Hannah and I are very similar, Ben, to you in that way. So we run 2 budgets, right? So we have one for our personal household, and then we have one for the business because I run my business through YNAB as well. And
right.
So on our personal side, we're in there daily, and I would say that especially the past month, I think I just mentioned, we just bought a house, and we didn't just buy a house that like it's move-in ready. We bought like a real fixer-upper house. So
that seems like something you do. I mean, you built your RV and
yeah. We're
you
into
outfitted
that.
the RV, and it seems like your thing.
But we are hemorrhaging money right now. I mean, just and it's all planned for, it's all budgeted for, like it's all there, it's ready.
Yeah,
right.
But I'm staying on top of it because I'm wanting to make sure we don't go over budget. So I'm in there multiple times a day because we're going to Lowe's, what seems to be multiple times a day. So right now it's like hyper aware. On a normal basis, it's very similar to Ernie. Like log in, check the transactions. We did manual entry for like 3 years and we just started linking things up this year. So it's making it a little easier, but we still have the habit of manually entering. Mm-hmm. We reconcile about weekly because we've done some credit card churning in the past, like you, Ernie, but at any given moment, there's normally one card that pretty much everything's going on. And so it still makes it pretty easy to reconcile for us because it's pretty much everything's on this card. And then a couple months from now, it might be everything on that card. You try not to get it too complicated at any given time. And then the last thing, Ben, very similar to you, is Hannah and I talk at the end of each month or right at the first. Typically, we'll wait till the first or the second of the next month. And we look and see any extra money that we have and can we funnel it anywhere? What are we focused on? Whether that's, investing more or more to the house or whatever it is that we're kind of focused on at the moment. The business is a little more automated. I really only have to do like real work in there a couple of times a month when I'm paying all the bills and paying myself. So I don't have to get into that one on a daily basis.
Cool. Is your income?
Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead, Ernie. Is your income super is your income that's 2020 right there. Is your income like super variable with the business, or have you gotten it pretty steady now, or what's it like for you?
So the business revenue is extremely variable. So it's way up and down, and like part of my business is I run like group classes and stuff, and those don't come every single month. So we can have 1 month that's like really big. I mean, my guess, obviously I don't know anything about YNAB, but I imagine that YNAB does really well in January because it's personal finance and it's beginning of the new year, and maybe things are different other months. And so the business does this, but Hannah and I put ourselves on a salary. And so we have our money in the business is 120, 150 days old or something. So we stay 3 or 4 months ahead so that we can handle that variance and still pay us a set salary every single month, no matter what.
Nice. That's awesome. That's the way to do it right there.
It makes it nice because then like, even though the business is up and down, at least our personal life feels like we're just steady Eddie. So
yeah, I love that. That's cool.
I'm just curious because I recently moved as well over the summer. During the pandemic, my family and I thought, hey, it'd be fun if we bought a new house. But we were the same thing. It's like our store was Target. Every single day, there were multiple transactions. Did you ever get overwhelmed with it all? Because as a budget nerd, like I love this stuff, but I felt like, oh my goodness, there were some days I'm like, how many more possible transactions can come through from Target?
It is. And it's, Ernie, it's especially interesting for me because I make videos about this stuff. And so like I've got 12 or 13 categories just to the home renovation right now because I'm like exterior landscaping, kitchen, living room. I've got all these categories. I don't think that I would go that hardcore if I wasn't planning to make some future videos about our spending on all this stuff.
Because you've got this whole other level where you're like, well, I got to think about organizing for myself, but I also got to think about like how I got to think about
YouTube. I have to think about YouTube. So, but yeah, totally. No, I mean, we get these long, ridiculous transactions at Lowe's, and I'm looking at Hannah. And I'm like, hey, what is this? She's like, oh, that's gardening gloves. Okay, gardening gloves. Okay, what is this? Oh, that's what. And it's like, oh man, it's definitely can be overwhelming. I don't think I could do it as detailed as I'm doing it now if I didn't have the years of like just getting used to the basics, you know what I mean? And that's what I always tell people is like, just start off really simple. You can always add that complexity.
Exactly.
Because Yeah, it's a lot right now for sure.
So gardening gloves would be exterior
Landscaping.
Landscaping.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
right.
But see, the pickaxe and the rake, that's not landscaping. That's tool. There's a dedicated category just the
Are
tool.
you like mining gold? What are you doing? Man.
We got to rip up a bunch of azaleas, man. I'm using that pickaxe to get them out of the yard.
All right.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Another question I had, I think this is kind of a fun one. What's like your one favorite thing to do in YNAB? Like what, like the action in the software? What's like the coolest thing to you? I think.
What about you, Ernie? You want to start?
Yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead, Ernie. Yeah.
I mean, it's nerdy. I love entering transactions myself. And so I think connected to that is when they actually import and they match up. Like that just does something where I feel like, I'm in control. I've got this thing down.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also the thing I hated the most during the peak of this move. Like, seriously, and my wife isn't great at entering transactions. And so there was a lot of like, okay, what is this target for? Okay, how about this target? How about these 3 targets? And then splitting them all up. And yeah. But that's generally my most favorite.
Cool. What about you, Nick? What's your favorite?
So mine, this is something I haven't actually done. I haven't put this out anywhere publicly. So this would be
the big reveal.
Brand new, big reveal. Okay, so I've always loved reports. Like in terms of actions, I'm a super nerd, right? So I like just clicking on the reports and looking at all the pie charts and the breakdowns and the trending. Like my favorite report is easily the bar chart trends because I like being able to see over time. Okay, but over the past 2 months, I completely rebuilt my budget and I've been testing out this idea where, and it doesn't work as well for people who are paycheck to paycheck, because if you're paycheck to paycheck, you need to pay a lot of attention to like the dates and when things are due and making sure you've allocated money to the right spot. But once you get past that, then the dates don't really matter as much. Right. And so I was still running my budget based on like, fixed bills due here and all this stuff. Anyways, I completely rebuilt the budget. And what I've done is that the group headers are now what I call the underlying value of like what that purchase does. So for example, we now have a family and relationship building group.
Cool.
And then we also have a joy group, and we have like a health and appearance group. And so we don't just have one eating out category, for example. We have eating out that would go under more like health and appearance if it falls there. Like, this is like we're eating out for health reasons or something, or we're eating at some place very specifically for health. That would go under that. Whereas eating out with my in-laws, that's like for family relationships. That's what we're getting out. Anyways, it's hard to kind of explain. I had to kind of show you what I mean. But my point is, so now when I go to the reports, instead of having it like bills or whatever, I have like the value that we're actually buying here.
I love that.
Very cool.
I'm like 2 months in, so we don't have a lot of data on it yet, but I'm excited. I love the reports and I love nerding out and I love tweaking my categories to then see how that shows up in the reports.
How often are you going into the reports? Because Ben and I don't use reports very much. And
we just
really
talked
curious
about
about this
in another episode. Yeah, we're not terribly nerdy on the reports. So yeah, I'm curious about that, Nick.
I mean, I go in there and look a couple times a month just because I'm nerdy about it. In terms of practical use, once a month, because that's when my wife and I will, similar to Ben, your date night meeting, that's when we look at the reports together, because we go, okay, we've been doing a lot of takeout or a lot of whatever. Are we happy with that? Like, look at that as a pie chart of how that compares to everything else. And like sometimes we're cool and we're like, no, we're super happy with that. But it's a regular check-in for us because it gives us the visual picture. And my wife is way more like visual. So like the graphics and the pie charts and stuff, that means a lot more to her than like looking at the income versus expense report. That's more, Excel looking. But being able to see like, this is the amount of money we've spent on pets, or this is the amount of money we've spent on our home or whatever. That's helpful for us to then go, okay, is that too much or too little?
Okay.
And so it's not
Right,
like we spend
right.
hours in there, but just a gut check every month of looking at the breakdown and going, are we happy with this? Is this helping us move us towards our goals?
So every month with that budget meeting, there are a number of categories where you're just rethinking them. I mean, you're not just budgeting a set amount that was predetermined months ago, right?
Yeah, well, we have goals for everything. We don't change our goals too often. I would say we change our goals minimally, maybe once a quarter is when we'll make like changes.
Mhm.
Again, we just made a big transition from an RV to a house. So right now is like not really a good
Your whole
helpful
budget's
example. Yeah.
it makes sense that you blew up your budget just now because
Yeah, totally.
everything's
But
different, right?
But normally, I would say what we're doing is we're trying to see if things get out of line. So, for example, just recently, our cosmetics, like if you look at the trends, our cosmetic category has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And so we've been setting a goal of like 80, but consistently the last 3 months, we've overspent to like 120. Now, part of that is my wife. She's gotten some new makeup that she's gotten that's a little bit more expensive. And then also, I've started actually using like some beard products as well that I historically haven't used. And so I'm spending a little bit more in that area too. And so now we talked just last month and it's like, hey, our trends show that, we've been spending like 120, 130. Our goal's 80. We need to switch that and we need to pull $50 from another goal to adjust that out. And so we're just looking at trends to see like, are we lining up with our goals? Do we need to make a change? And most importantly, are we happy with that?
Yeah,
Last story I'll share on this is we just moved to this town. We love this town. We spent like months here beforehand in our RV to like really test it out, see if we liked it, And when you go to a town and you're visiting, you spend very differently than when you live there. And because you'll justify like, oh, we can go get the pizza. We're going to go out to the cool restaurant or we're going to get the whatever.
Because you're trying it out, right?
Because you're trying it out. You got to test it out. Right?
Yeah, right.
After we had been here for like 3 months, our eating out budget was just like way more than normal. And we were like, okay, if we're moving here, we've got to stop. We got to start acting like we live here and not spending like we're on vacation. So it's just looking at the reports help with stuff like that.
Cool.
Nice.
I love that. Yeah, that's actually really interesting because I'll often look at, what my goal amount is versus what my average budgeting is. And or average spent, I mean. And that, so I'll do that gut check where I'm like, hey, we're budgeting, $200 a month in dining out, but we're really spending average $250. So maybe we should adjust that, something like that. Instead of just like moving money there all the time every month, actually make that the base amount that you budget. But I like the idea of looking at the trends a little more because that would let you see, hey, this is what we've been doing lately instead of like, this is what we did 12 months ago, because that's going to be different. So yeah, that's really interesting, especially if you're like you, Nick, and your whole life has changed the past few months.
Totally.
So that's helpful.
Well, and I think the importance of it all really is, what do you want? That's ultimately why we do all this, right? It's like making sure that we all spend money on what we want. And so it's, I mentioned it 100 times on stuff, but we spend a lot of money on our pets. And so every month we see that line, and sometimes it can go really big and really small. But we'll do a gut check of like, that does two things for us. One, it reminds us we love our pets. We want to spend on our pets. We're happy with that number, but we're not going to get any more pets.
Well, I love what you did with the values for your category groups. Like, that's really cool because it shows, like where your money is, there your heart will be also, right? Like, like you can see like where your heart is and because you can see where your money's going, right? So that's really neat. I think when you make a video on that, I'm sure one is forthcoming. I think that's going to become a full-on thing in the community. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it's been fun to play with, right? Because like even like the three of us, if the three of us were to go out to eat to the same location, but not together, but just to the same exact spot, we could all go to Chick-fil-A or something. We'd all be we'd all be going for somewhat different reasons. Like, it might be convenience. Some people might be, it might be like a date night. So it's a relationship with your wife. It might be like doing something nice for the kids. Like there's all these different reasons that you could go and make the exact same purchase. And so really it comes down to like what's underneath that purchase that's driving you to make that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I think about this too. Like when I eat out, if I eat out by myself, that goes on personal spending, you know.
Yes.
But if I go and eat out with my partner, with Caitlin, we put that on restaurants. So you know, that's kind of a thing, and you could break that down a million different ways. I love that. That's really cool. I guess I should say what my favorite thing to do is.
Yeah.
got off track. If I had to pick like one action that I just like love, it's the move money feature, being able to move money, because we'll talk about this a little bit, but I love Rule 3 and rolling with bunches, and I just love that feature because I think back in the day, back in YNAB 4 days, we didn't have that. Like, if you wanted to move money between categories, you had to say like minus $5 in this category and then plus $5 in this category, right? So you had to like actually like manually do it, and you know that value of like being able to move money and change your budget's always been a part of YNAB, but like now it's like in the software, and I just love it because you can just make that decision and kind of visually see it move, and I don't know, I just love it. It's very satisfying to me. So I think that's pretty cool. And one thing that we're working on that I'm super excited about, I think I can talk about this because it's on our up next page, is tracking those movements. It's something, folks. Did you know this, Nick? We're working on.
No, I didn't know you guys are working on that, but people talk about it all the time.
Yeah, me and Ernie have it. It's in internal beta right now, which means just the YNAB team has it, and it's pretty great.
There have already been a couple times where I'm like, why is this balance where it's at? Look at the move money feature, and I can go back and okay, that's what I did. I moved money from here to there. Yeah,
I think it'll be. I don't want to say too much about it because it's in beta, so it's going to change. But you'll be able to look back 34 days. What all the movements you made in every category and like overall. So that'll be helpful for a lot of people. So I remember it was funny because there was like the day before we on the team got it, I had one of those situations where I was like, I made a mistake somewhere, and I was like, why is there like $40 in this category? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know where it came from. What happened? But literally, the next day I would have been able to answer that question, but couldn't at that point. But yeah, so that'll be something really cool that'll be coming along. I'm sure we'll chat about it when it comes. But last question, and I think you should go last, Nick, because I want to give you the final word on this. What is your favorite YNAB rule?
Did you want to say any more? Ben, you already mentioned Rule 3. Rule 5. Do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, Rule 3, roll with the punches. Definitely my favorite rule because I think it's what makes budgeting really work. I was in that camp back in the day where it's like, once you set the budget, you can never change it. And what it leads to, I think, is this kind of budgeting where you actually have less accountability because instead of saying, hey, I overspent, I need to handle that, you say, you look back on how the month went and say like, well, we overspent on everything and the ship is sinking and everything is terrible. I guess we'll just try again next month. You know what I mean? So I think it actually is great because it actually encourages more accountability because you actually have to deal with the overspending. But it also, on the flip side of that, it actually gives you more freedom because it just puts you in charge and you say like, hey, if my values change or my priorities change, I can change my budget. And that's what should happen. It's not like, hey, I have this thing I can do. It's like, no, this is something that you should do because it's good for you because, hey, your values change or your priorities change. So yeah, I think that's my favorite. And that's why I like the move money feature as well. It kind of goes hand in hand. So
yeah, I'll piggybacking on that, the rolling with the punches just created this habit in me of weighing the trade-offs. And I think that's ultimately what just transformed my finances, got me from point A to point B. Yeah. Because every purchase, I was just weighing those trade-offs and really scrutinizing what my dollars are being spent on. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, you can actually see if you want to make a change, you do it with your eyes wide open, Yeah. Because you can always see what am I giving up in order to get this, and that's huge. So what's
Well,
your favorite?
my favorite one is rule 2, embrace your true expenses, because this is what I didn't do before YNAB.
Yeah.
You know, that quarterly water bill would hit, and it wasn't much. We're talking 120 to 150 bucks, but it sent me scrambling to
It's
find
a lot when you're not expecting it. Yeah.
Yeah, and at that time it was just, my wife and I, we were just right out of college, so we didn't have a whole lot of money. So $150 was a big deal, and it meant us really sacrificing some other things for the month or going into credit card debt. And once I started saving for those true expenses and then seeing the power of that, like it was, seriously, it was life-changing. Like I still remember the emotions when I was able to save for Christmas, pay for it all in cash. And then on January 1st, it was a done deal. And then I start saving for the next year. I felt so much in control. I felt just on top of the world. And I was like, oh, sweet. Now we don't have to use our tax return to pay off Christmas. We can do something cool with this,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one thing that's cool. It's like windfalls are actually windfalls. You don't have to use it to clean up messes, anymore. So yeah, it's
one of the things with that one too, Ernie, is like everyone's people's lives are so different that the true expenses thing is so important, because especially depending on like your geographic location, like you can have so many different things, and some people can have, like in Wisconsin, right? I imagine that your utility bills are wildly fluctuating.
Yep.
And so when you think about your goals based on a yearly average and building that surplus up so that you don't have like the winter coming and then you just get wrecked because, you were basing things off summer budget or something like that, right? That matters. I think about a lot of people I've seen in California, their property taxes are due like in, I think December and February. And so you would think they have 2 payments that are split roughly in half, but they're not due in every 6 months. They're due like in December and then February. And so I see people who aren't embracing their true expenses just get hammered, because right at the end of the year, if they're not saving, or they forget to do December and then to turn around and do another one in February, it can absolutely wreck your budget. So yeah, rule 2 is so important, and it's such a game changer, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. So what is it for you, Nick? It can be the same ones as us, too. Don't feel.
100%. Number 3. Number 3, roll with the punches. It's what sold me on YNAB out of the gate, and it's what we needed, because especially, as a full-time RVer for 3 years. It's always rolling with the punches. That's all you're doing all the time. Because it's like, oh, we got a flat tire. We need more money for auto maintenance. Oh, this happened. We need that. Campground fees are more expensive in Colorado than they are in South Carolina. We need to roll with the punches.
Yeah, you're all over the place.
Your life is constantly changing. So, no, roll with the punches it's also been, I just want to really drive home what you said. Like, it's the most freeing one, because I do think people get so rigid.
Yeah.
And then they go, wait, I can just like change it. I can just like take money from here to there. It's like, yes, you can take money and change it. It's totally fine.
And at first, like, I think a lot of people have this reaction, especially if you were like me or you, and like you've kind of been a personal finance junkie for a while, and you're a budgeting person. When we say that, it's like, that sounds like sacrilege. Like,
totally.
Aren't you just going to go crazy and just do whatever you want? But you find that you don't really, because you're always making every decision with your eyes open, because you have a zero-based budget. It all goes back to rule 1 in the end. But, you do make good decisions because you have all the information in front of you, So
yeah,
that's huge. Good word. Well, is there anything you want to plug your stuff at all, Nick, or just go to your website?
Yeah, if you guys want to see more of what I do, you can search Nick True on YouTube. It'll come right up. You can search Mapped Out Money in your podcast player. It'll come right up. And I just appreciate you guys, Ben and Ernie, for letting me hang out and talk about my favorite topic for a little while.
This is good. This will be a longer episode, which the people have been asking for, so this is perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Nick, and I guess we'll talk some more, and I'll let you know when this goes up. So.
All right. See you guys.
All right. Bye, everybody. Happy budgeting.